Want the inside scoop on this game and all things Trojans? Be sure to sign up for the Three Torches presented by Smart & Final. It's a free newsletter that'll hit your email inbox 3 times a week with game info, player insights, and more. Go to usctrojans.com/3torches and sign up. Jordan Moore, Sean Cody, Max Brown, and Keely Orr joins us now. Our weekly football roundtable. We talked about it a little bit at the top. I mean, just so much coming out of this game. What was your sort of takeaway as you walked away from the Coliseum on Saturday night? What stuck with you?
It was a hard rewatch, obviously. It was one of those where I hate games like this because I feel like you could slice it so many ways. If they just did this, if they just did this, if this call went their way, and that's the heartbreaking one. I mean, the offense played well, all things considered. I was not expecting, given what we saw the last couple of weeks from this offense going up against a top defense in the nation like Utah. I thought that they looked more like the offense we know USC to be. There seemed to be a confidence. Marshawn Lloyd got off to a good start. Taj Washington played well as well. So I thought that was one of the positives to take out of Saturday.
Did you notice any changes offensively, Max? I asked Coach Simmons about the ball getting out of Caleb's hands a little quicker, but he sort of just said that the first read was there, and that was kind of why that happened. But after some issues with pressure the last couple of weeks, they obviously solved it in some ways, but did they solve it with the play calling, or did they solve it just because the offensive line was better?
Yeah, probably a little bit of both. It's funny, you're right with the ball getting out of his hands quicker, but I still feel like, these past couple of weeks we've seen a little bit more of Caleb hero ball than I feel like saw early on in the season. And when this offense is really cooking, less of the plays where it's, hey, you're dropping back, and then it just feels like he's just gearing up to roll out there. I think for me, I pointed out, that's why I asked Coach about it. The second and third quarters, the offense stalls out a little bit. Marshawn Lloyd had that great run early, but then doesn't have the carries the rest of the game. And I think that's a little bit of, hindsight's 20/20. I think they want to make sure Caleb, the ball is in his hands and he has the opportunity to really elevate. But then when you lose that game and you look back, you're like, well, man, should you have got Marshawn Lloyd more touches? And I know Lincoln, goes back and forth with that. I'm sure he does. But that is one stat that really stuck out to me walking away from this game.
Yeah, and I did look at it, Sean, and they didn't have the ball a lot in the second or third quarter either because they couldn't really sustain drives. So that's part of it too, where maybe those it's like when you only get 3 plays a drive, nobody's getting a lot of touches.
Yeah, it was frustrating on the rewatch, I think, to watch it and see the run game and how dominant I thought the offensive line. I mentioned it. Remember watching it and being like, man, we look physical tonight. I'd commented before in games prior like, we look like we come out flat. We're not firing off the ball. But that game, the offensive line, I told Jonah that they came flying off the ball. Man, they were knocking people around. Utah, who has been a great run-stopping defense. They were making room, creating room, and some of that was Utah was willing to accept that. And I think Utah probably thought that they were more worried about Caleb Williams stopping that pass, so they were going to give up some running game. But I still thought they should have kept the pedal on that running game because that really, I think, when SC's offense is clicking, that running game is moving. It's going up and down, and it gets a little stally when it starts firing just passes, and the other team can kind of sit there and get ready for it.
I think the biggest thing we got wrong as a group, or was unexpected, it was a much higher scoring game than we thought. I mean, I really think anyone that was giving score predictions that I talked to sort of thought the winner would be in the 20s and maybe the loser would be in the teens kind of thing. Both teams in the 30s right at the end. So it was a fairly high scoring game. Utah, boy, they find a way under Kyle Whittingham, huh? I mean, there's a safety back there playing running back, and I don't know if that's his first time doing it. He might have a future doing it. He was unbelievable.
Unreal night. And that was someone who Cody Kessler in our preview, Red Dot guy, he said both ways. And it was just wild to see him play as well as he did.
Yeah, I think the disappointing thing is maybe the game planning for the whole situation. You get a chance to see it against Cal, and you're thinking you gotta key up for this. You got to be ready for this. There's not many things. Obviously, I think Utah did a great job involving him in the passing attack.
I was going to say that was the wrinkle.
Which was the wrinkle for that, and unfortunately, he ends up on Braylon Shelby a couple times and some big plays there. But I just think even in the running game with Jaquindon Jackson, he was. Being the quarterback in the Wildcat and kind of running it off him. Some interesting things there, but I just thought it was on tape a little bit. You got to be ready, prepared. What are we going to do? And you could hear it kind of in Coach Nua's voice that just not prepared enough for what was how they were attacking it.
And I think it's one of those things, if we're being honest, outside of that pick 6, that's Bryson Barnes' best game of the season. And I think great teams and great defenses, you take away what a team does best. And I think going into that game, to stop the run more and force Bryson Barnes to really win on a one-on-one matchups on the outside. In hindsight, it would have been great to see that more. But credit the kid for playing well. But looking back, that is one of the things we were saying, man, the reason we didn't have this score prediction is because we didn't think Bryson Barnes was going to play that well. Why did Bryson Barnes play that well? Because we gave him opportunities that he took advantage of.
Yeah, and I still don't think that Utah asked him to do a ton. And that was sort of, I think, one of the difficult things about calling the game was, a lot of what they were doing felt programmed. He was hitting his first read. A lot of the big plays came on those like wheel routes that we talked about. He's not back there scanning the field, going through 3 or 4 progressions. When he did that, that's sort of when you saw the pick 6. Mostly they sort of programmed him to do it, and it worked when he was out there. And then they ran a lot of the running game, and he used his legs more. I mean, I said at the beginning of the broadcast, I didn't think he would be a weapon in the running game. They used him more in design runs. He's not some crazy ad-libber, but ultimately the ad-lib on the final play is the one that broke the back.
And that works both ways, right? Like, you're right. He wasn't going to second and third progressions, and we just got beat by maybe a Michael Penix or a Bo Nix who we'll face later in the season. But then the flip side also exists where, like, if they're, scheming things wide open and it's almost easy on that offense in some regard, that's a concern in its own right. But it just feels like, you can sense the frustration a little bit of it's just little things here and there. It feels like every week it's one block there, one alignment there, one missed tackle on late in the game that you allow a quarterback leaking for a 30-yard gain. Just here and there, you can sense that frustration. I've been part of those programs where you feel like you're that close, and it feels like that this is one of those teams.
We have been talking about maintaining rush lanes here at USC since the national championship game when Vince Young broke all our hearts, and the inability to contain on that night is something I'll never forget. But it was probably even before. I mean, I remember even in those peak days of Pete Carroll defenses of being like, oh, the mobile quarterback is the one that can be a problem. Now every quarterback's mobile, even a kid like Bryson Barnes who may not light up the 40. That play, Sean, I mean, is that what that comes down to? Is it a lot harder than we make it sound when we're just contain and maintain your rush lane? Also people love to talk about the spy, I think, because it's one football concept that they can understand. The person is a spy, but like what did that come down to?
Well, you're asking a defensive lineman to do a lot of things, right? You're asking him to play as ferociously and hard as he can and do anything he can to try to get to this quarterback, but you're also saying, well, do that in a confined space and don't. So it is difficult because you're, like I said, you're putting it all out there, and if you get nudged a little bit, you're out of your lane. So, and guys go out of their lanes all the time, but it's really more of, to me, it's always been just a feel for your whole group, right? You kind of know your guys, what to expect. You've rushed with this guy to your left or to the right. You kind of know what he's going to do. I think a good defensive line has good leaders on that line, and they can fill in those spots. Like, I know my guys over here, or they're gonna work a game, or this guy's gonna rush deep, and I have an opportunity. So it's more knowing those kind of things, and it's really the responsibility of the defense and the play call, to be quite honest. If it depends if you're in zone or man. If your defensive line knows you're in man, then no eyes on the quarterback. The quarterback knows that. He knows he can take off. If you're in zone, then maybe some more eyes on it, and you can play a little different. So a lot of different aspects to it, but it's as a defensive lineman, man, you're asking a guy, a 300-pound guy to brush his butt off and try to tear it upfield, and he might, get nudged a little bit. And so in that perspective, it is.
Yeah, and I haven't rewatched the play, but I believe they were in man on that play because I do remember vividly watching the cornerbacks running the exact opposite direction, or I guess the same direction that the quarterback was running. And, I think, again, to the untrained eye, that can kind of look bad. Like, why don't they see this? But that's, they're sort of doing their job, and that's kind of football, right? Everyone's got a job to do, and when one person doesn't, or a group of people don't, it breaks down.
I think we're hearing this word. It's just it's a consistency issue for me right now. This team, you watch this, and it's turning into consistently inconsistent. I think and that's the problem. You're at the mid part of the year here, and you're just seeing way too many inconsistencies at this moment. If you see these kind of breakdowns early in the season, you think, we can tweak this and tweak this. The tweaks haven't really come. And we keep kind of thinking we're going to get a better product every week, and we're kind of just getting the same thing because those inconsistencies, and they got to find a way to get those fixed, or else this thing can kind of keep swinging the wrong direction. And if they can't get those little things fixed, it could get ugly here.
And it's one of those things, too, that the more you start thinking about, hey, I just got to fix this one little thing, then the next little thing can pop versus
Instead of just playing ball.
the best teams just play free. They just react. They just go. That's how this team was last year. And it's a fine line for Lincoln that he'll have to navigate of, doubling down on these mistakes and saying, hey, we got to fix these things. We got to be consistent. And then on the other side, guys overthinking and not playing free, especially when you're getting into that too deep late in the season where it's backups that might just naturally have to think more. It's a fine line there.
Keely, when the schedule came out this week, screamed trap game. Notre Dame, Utah, then at Cal, a team that's going to have a lesser record. Then you come back and you play Washington, Oregon, and UCLA, right? I mean, it is like the most obvious trap game ever. That's sort of out of the. We don't have to worry about that now. I mean, it's sort of an all hands on deck, kitchen sink kind of game. They have to get this turned around, knowing what's coming.
100%. And I feel like the team itself is taking it game by game. You can't overlook everything. We saw them come out of the bye week and kind of look kind of sleepy against Arizona State, and I think that in itself was a wake up call that each game you need to bring your best. Not that they didn't necessarily think that, but now they know that they need to bring it every week.
Well, we saw. I mean, you just saw it with Washington. I mean,
100%.
Good enough to beat Oregon in an incredibly emotional game at home, and then they were still at home, played Arizona State, and just slept walk through 60 minutes. And if Arizona State had any sort of kicking situation, they might have won that game. They refused to kick field goals. I never seen. I don't know if you guys were watching that game.
It was brutal. Yes.
I mean, they were down like the 5-yard line, and they were like, I don't know if we trust it. We're going to go for it. It was unbelievable. But this is the story of the season. But they're a tricky opponent. We saw that firsthand.
Totally. And
Scattaboo. He's a player.
Yeah, no, exactly. He does everything in zero emotion too, which always cracks me up.
Monster Energy is the official energy drink of USC. Unleash the beast and fight on Trojans and fly on with ONT. Ontario International Airport is a proud sponsor of our USC Trojans. Visit SoCalSoEasy.com to book your journey through ONT today. All right, one more segment to come. Our over-under is next on Trojans Live. Trojans Live is sponsored by Pechanga Resort Casino, proud partner of football, which brings us to our Pechanga over-under. Jordan Moore, Sean Cody, Max Brown, Keely, your one final segment of Trojans Live on a Monday night. I have a sort of a larger question here that goes with the over-under.
Oh.
And it's just sort of something we can get into more on the Saturday show as well. Zachariah Branch is obviously an explosive, just an electric talent. He would have been the story after the game if USC had won with that punt return. An incredible moment inside the Coliseum. With that said, he is not making a huge impact at wide receiver. He had 2 touches in the game. One of them was a touchdown, but 2 offensive touches in the game. So over under 6 offensive touches for Zachariah Branch on Saturday. I'll let you know his season high is 5. Ooh. So, what my ultimate question is the 2 people they compare him to are Tyreek Hill and Tavon Austin. Tyreek Hill is a wide receiver 1. Tavon Austin became a gadget guy. They're both electric, but Zachariah, is his future as a wide receiver 1, and how that's ultimately what he wants it to be. How does he get there instead of being a gadget guy, which, ultimately right now is basically where he is in this offense.
I'm trying to think through. I've called one Cal game, so another defense well, trying to have a matchup thing. But my gut says that this will be the mold of this game offensively will be we need to get back to doing what we do, and there will be less scheming for specific guys. So I'm going to go under on this.
You looking at me?
Yeah, go ahead.
The problem with the progression of the numbers that you said with Zachariah Branch, how much did the injury impact how they wanted to use him?
You have to wonder that because he hit 5, right off the bat. San Jose State, he had 5, he had 4 catches. He's had a couple pretty big games a receiver with 4 catches and like 65, 70 yards.
I'm going to say over.
It just feels like the breakout's coming to me. I don't know if it's Saturday, but he's just too talented to not have a bigger impact on the game.
It seems like he could take the top off a little more, and we really haven't seen them use
in that
capacity. So I'm going to say under. I think they're going to. I think a lot of this could be problem solved. Let's pound that rock a bit.
There's so many receivers involved, and I think it's going to be one of those things of we need to do what we do. We're not calling it for a specific player. Whoever's there, go execute because we're that good.
It's a big game. They need to get that dub. 1:00 on Saturday. We'll go on at 11 a.m. Trojans Live is a production of USC Sports Properties and Playfly Sports. Our executive producers Drew DeHart, Rick Cutler is our producer engineer, and Herman Aguilera back at the studio. Thank you for watching us. Thank you for listening to us. We'll be back on Saturday. Let's beat the Bears and fight on.